Mokoape was an anti-apartheid activist and the former leader of the Pan-African Congress and the Black Consciousness Movement. At 13, he was already involved in politics of the Black Consciousness Movement. Dr Mokoape was first arrested and detained 2 years later at the tender age of 15. For more on the life and times of Dr Mokoape, we are now joined by Lybon Mabasa. Mabasa was a co-president of the Black Consciousness Movement together with Dr Mokoape. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and starting off this conversation by expressing our condolences to you as well as those who loved him so dearly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Lybon, what does this moment also mean for you, somebody who has worked with the doctor? Because also thinking about the Black Consciousness Movement and probably how the Black Consciousness Movement, in some people may probably argue that it has probably lost its essence, and probably there is a need for it to reinvigorate that conversation around Black Consciousness Movement, even if you look at what happened with the Clicks incident.
Well, we start by saying that it is actually the Black Consciousness Movement that changed this country, that changed the attitude of Black people towards their oppressor, that put into the agenda the question of confrontation against those who oppress you. I think Dr. Mokoape fully represented that. When President Mandela talks about the 1976 SASO BPC 9 who came into Robben Island, he acknowledges that they literally changed the rules of engagement even in prison. Before they came to prison, people would be taken out to go and dig the quarry and all that. But these young men were restless, were determined, and they were willing to engage their oppressors at whatever level. And if truth be told, the Black Consciousness Movement laid the very foundation for what South Africa finally became. Obviously, when you talk to Dr. Mokoape, he would say this is not exactly how they thought things would turn out. They thought liberation would not mean, say for instance, what the UNDP is saying, that the majority of people, particularly Black people, are even worse off than they have ever been, even under the apartheid regime. They had fought in the full belief that there will be full liberation for particularly Black people, that Black people would not be confronted by the kind of situations which we see, the rise of racism that we see at schools and cliques and all these places. They had thought that would be able to put in place an agenda and a program that will restore fully the dignity of Black people, that will restore fully the humanity of Black people, and thereby the humanity of everybody in our country, in the Azania that we so love.
And if you look at his arrest, for instance, at the tender age of 15, what does this then tell us about that level of conscientiousness that took place during that time?
It speaks to two things. It speaks to his political consciousness at a very early age, that at 15 he was marching side by side with Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, that he got arrested, that at 16 he was already serving a jail term of 3 years, that when he came back, other people would have been expected that they have learned their lesson, that they would not be involved. But that was not Dr. Mokoape. Dr. Mokoape went on to collaborate with Steve Biko to set up the South African Student Organization to be one of its strongest voices. It was through Dr. Mokoape that the BPC was set up at a time when even Steve Biko was saying maybe we are not yet ready to set up a mass-based political organization. Dr. Mokoape was so determined that the BPC, the Black People's Convention, was set up in 1972, and he continued being active, not only as a young person. If you remember the 1972 strikes in Durban, Dr. Mokoape was involved in mobilizing, assisting the workers. In 1973, he was banned. In 1974, after the Viva Frelimo rally, he was arrested. In 1976, he was sent to Robben Island for 6 years. And again, one would have thought this man maybe will be broken. This man would change his views, but his views remained forever very strong. A fellow prisoner with him at Robben Island, he says, Dr. Mokoape said to them, the only people they need to listen to are the leadership of the BCM and other liberation movements, but never take instructions from the warders and the rulers, and therefore they flouted all the rules that before they went to Robben Island were in place. President Mandela was saying the fact that they came out not broken by hard labor and so on is thanks to the young people of the Black Contrast movement, because they made no room for compromise or surrendering their right to fight for their liberation.
Yep. Just quickly then, I don't know when last you probably had a conversation with him and what his take was on the state of the PAC itself and how fractured it is, including how it's playing out in Parliament. What was his take, if at all you had that conversation with him?
Well, I talked to him about two days ago, and Mokoape will always say, we wait for revolution to wipe out all this rot which we see. He was disappointed not only with what happens in the PAC, but disappointed by the general political state of affairs, that politics was about putting the needs of the majority on the agenda. But as things stand, people who say they are involved in politics, it's about themselves, it's about their pockets, abantu abadlayo. And Comrade Mokoape was quite determined to say, this is not what our political stance should be. This is not what we should fight for. So, yes, he would be disappointed at what is happening in the PAC. He would also be very disappointed even at the fact that the Black Contrast movement, in which he was a leader, is not as united as it is supposed to be. He was absolutely disappointed with the ANC that if 500 billion is supposed to be available, it doesn't even settle on the table. It gets looted, stolen, and all other things even before it can land on the table. And those are the kind of things that disappointed Dr. Mokoape.
Okay, but Mabasa, just in conclusion, can you tell us about any memorial services that are planned, including the funeral?
The funeral will be on Friday. We are presently still working on a memorial service. We think basically Dr. Mokoape is actually, after Steve Biko, he is one of the greatest leaders who have passed on. If you remember, he actually said, compared to how he looked at these multiracial organizations and so on, he would think that Steve Biko was even a little liberal on these things. But he was very adamant that the struggle of Black people is independent and that the struggle of Black people need to be carried by them alone. A sentiment which was later carried by Biko himself, who said Black people must stop being spectators on the game they should be playing. He was totally committed to the cause of liberating Black people, particularly the youth. He was still involved with young people, the students, He was in the forefront with the youth of Fees Must Fall and so on. And we hope the country should understand that a big baobab tree has been cut down, that even if the flags throughout the country are not half-mast, this country is in a state of mourning because Chaupe Wabubedi, Aubrey Mokoape has passed on.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and indeed condolences again. That is Lybon Mabasa, who worked with Dr. Mokoape.